From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Hamas says it is pressing forward with efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza despite the absence of Israeli negotiators. Talks continue for the fourth day in Cairo. Britain's top intelligence agency lowers the threat level of domestic terrorism in Northern Ireland from substantial to severe, meaning the threat of an attack is likely compared to it being highly likely. Beijing says the U.S. is using the Philippines as a pawn in the South China Sea as hostilities between the two Asian nations escalate over the disputed region. And the UN Security Council holds an emergency meeting to discuss Haiti's spiraling crisis where gangs are threatening a civil war and genocide unless the prime minister steps down. And Venezuela will hold its presidential elections on July 28th. President Nicolas Maduro seeks a third term as uncertainty looms over who will be the opposition candidate. We begin with the latest here in the United States. Super Tuesday had become a much anticipated moment this campaign season, and it certainly did not disappoint. After a string of early primary losses and questions compounding about when or if she would exit the race, we are now learning that for UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, she plans to suspend her presidential campaign as early as today.
Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for president. When I began, I said the campaign was grounded in my love for our country. Just last week, my mother, a first-generation immigrant, got to vote for her daughter for president, only in America. I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. And although I will no longer be a candidate, I will not stop using my voice for the things I believe in.
Now her exit comes after perennial frontrunner, former President Donald Trump won convincingly up and down the spectrum last night. His only defeat came in ultra-liberal Vermont, where Haley managed to post just her second win this primary season. Nevertheless, despite that one blemish, the night was undoubtedly and convincingly for Donald Trump. But now begins the arduous task of trying to win over Nikki Haley voters, which could prove challenging. In fact, polls say 81% of those who backed Haley said that they will not vote for Donald Trump in the general election. Now, this is an uphill climb indeed for the ex-president, but not only will Donald Trump have to woo Haley voters, but more importantly, he also will have to woo those deep-pocketed donors as well. Haley, in fact, was able to outraise Donald Trump in January, and even after lopsided defeats, the former South Carolina governor was able to reach financial parity with the Trump campaign. And now the cash-strapped GOP nominee will have to find a way to coalesce donors and voters as he prepares for a grueling rematch with incumbent President Joe Biden. And now, speaking of Joe Biden, Super Tuesday revealed both pluses and minuses for the president. Much like his Republican challenger, his wins were equally convincing throughout the night, except for a surprising and unexpected defeat in the U.S. territory of American Samoa. For the second election cycle in a row, the small territory spoke with a large voice. The island of about 45,000 picked little-known Jason Palmer over the Democratic standard-bearer. Palmer, 52, is a resident of Baltimore, Maryland, and he describes himself as an entrepreneur, impact investor, and philanthropist. Now, despite that lone upset, President Biden held serve throughout the night. Yet, if there was another protagonist seeking to upset the race, it was the quote-unquote uncommitted voter. Now, we remember uncommitted spoke with a booming voice in Michigan, and that voice carried through on Super Tuesday, particularly in Minnesota, where it garnered 20% of the vote. But in the end, Biden and Trump both held serve, their respective strengths and weaknesses on display. And the looming question for the campaigns going forward, can they fortify those weaknesses before November? And now on to Europe, where the war in Ukraine continues. In fact, Ukraine carried out a successful attack using sea drones on Moscow's patrol boat. The Russian warship sustained heavy damages and eventually sunk in the Black Sea yesterday. Now, Kiev says that at least 7 Russian troops were in fact killed in this attack. Moscow, in fact, has acknowledged the attack, but has not provided information on the number of casualties. Just last month, Ukraine used sea drones to sink another Russian warship. That incident involved a Russian amphibious landing ship, which was also destroyed in the Black Sea. Now, sea drones are not a new concept in warfare. In fact, they've been deployed to great effect since World War II. However, this is the first time that the drones are being used at a large scale to target high-value targets. They have, in fact, become indispensable in leveling the playing field as Ukraine continues to find itself both outmanned and outgunned. Ukraine domestically produces these sea drones, which are uncrewed remote-controlled boats loaded with explosives and can travel hundreds of kilometers. The sleek vessels are quick on the water and have a low radar signature, making them very difficult to detect. And the sea drones cost over $250,000, have left no doubt their lethality is without question on the open sea. The Magura V5 is one of the success stories for Ukraine as it continues to fight the Russian invasion. Here's what the Ukrainian minister in charge of the sea drone project had to say about it.
A sufficient number of drones are being produced now. This year it will be thousands of drones. I cannot say how many exactly because this is already quite sensitive information. But I will say this, there is no limit. The niche of long-range kamikaze drones is growing, with the range of 300, 500, 700 and 1,000 kilometers. 2 years ago, this niche did not exist at all.
After the counteroffensive came to a stalemate against Russian forces, Ukraine ran short on weapons and ammunition. Though it looks like increasing domestic weapons manufacturing capabilities has provided the boost that Kiev needed.
Last year, our defense industry produced 3 times more than in 2022. Our capabilities for 2023 are 6 times larger than in the previous year. As of today, we have almost half of these capabilities contracted for 2024. We work together with the Ministry of Defense and the Defense Forces to secure further contracts. These are about 100 state companies and close to 400 private companies. This includes 300,000 employees.
Ukraine's attacks on Russian warships in the Black Sea has Moscow deeply worried about the Crimean Peninsula. In fact, after yesterday's attack on the Russian patrol boat, the Kerch Bridge, which links Crimea to Russia, was closed down in fear of a larger attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin has lost 2 ships from his Black Sea fleet within a span of just 30 days. For now, the scores are in favor of President Volodymyr Zelensky, with Ukraine dominating at least this battle. Now, keeping up their promise of a no-limit friendship, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are taking Russia-China ties above and beyond, literally. The two allies are now aiming for the moon. Putin wants to set up a nuclear power plant with China on the lunar surface. Moscow says one day it could help build lunar settlements. When and how? Our next report explains.
When it comes to ties with his dear friend Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin is reaching for the moon. Well, quite literally. The Russian president wants a nuclear power plant with China, but on the moon's surface. Moscow says this could one day allow lunar settlements to be built. It has set a target for 2035. Russia and China signed an agreement on a lunar program in March 2021. The two partners presented a roadmap for the construction of an international lunar research station. Moscow has been contributing with its expertise on nuclear space energy. The head of Russia's space agency Roscosmos says that solar panels would not be able to provide electricity to power future lunar settlements, while nuclear power could. This is because with lunar nights lasting for 14 Earth days, relying solely on solar power carries risks for both manned and unmanned missions. Yuri Borislov also said the project would likely need to be done without the presence of humans. Space cooperation between Russia and China also includes the development of lunar landers for research, a jumping robot, and smart mini rovers designed to study the moon's surface. Under the project, China will send 3 missions to the moon's surface, the latest coming up in May, which will be the Chang 6 mission. Russia also plans to build a nuclear-powered cargo spaceship or a space tugboat, which can transport cargo from one orbit to another, collect space debris, along with other applications. Moscow says it has solved all technical questions connecting the project, except finding a solution on how to cool the nuclear reactor. The concept of using nuclear reactors to power future lunar colonies has also been floated by NASA. Just months after the Apollo 11 mission put humans on the moon in 1969, Apollo 12 astronauts used a nuclear generator to provide electricity for scientific experiments on the lunar surface. Today, the issue of energy supply in space is growing even more essential. NASA is also pursuing plans to return humans to the moon with its Artemis mission. The first landing is scheduled for 2026. Last month, several US media reports said Russia plans to use nuclear weapons in space, which would target satellites. Russian President Vladimir Putin had hit back and condemned the claims. He called it a ploy to draw Russia into arms negotiations on the West's terms. The Roscosmos head says Russia is against deploying nuclear weapons in space, adding that Moscow believes space should be free of nuclear weapons. But Russia's ambitious plan of a nuclear power plant on the moon comes at a time when its space agency has suffered a series of setbacks. Russia's first moon mission in 47 years failed last year. Its Luna 25 spacecraft spun out of control and crashed. But with Russia and China planning to reach the moon together, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are certainly holding up their promise of a no-limits friendship.
Now, the crisis in the Caribbean nation of Haiti continues to escalate. Armed gangs led by former police officer Jimmy Cherizier attempted to hijack Haiti's only international airport. The army was deployed to secure the airstrip as flight operations were halted due to the security situation. Meanwhile, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who was returning from Kenya, was unable to land in his own country. He was denied entry by Haiti's neighbor, the Dominican Republic, and had to land in Puerto Rico. Henry was in Africa to sign a security agreement with Kenyan President William Ruto. Under the new deal, Kenya will deploy 1,000 police officials in Haiti to tackle the growing menace of armed gangs. However, Haiti descended into chaos during Henry's trip as gang leader Cherizier launched an all-out coup against the prime minister. And now the mafia boss is threatening to wage a civil war if Prime Minister Henry returns to Haiti.
If Ariel Henry doesn't step down, the country will suffer a genocide. If Ariel Henry doesn't step down, if the international community continues to support Ariel Henry, they will lead us directly into a civil war that will end in genocide. We will fight Ariel until the last drop of blood. We will fight Ariel Henry until he resigns. I am ready to make an alliance with the devil, ready to sleep in the same bed as the devil.
Now, Haiti has already been under a state of emergency after the first gang attacks began earlier this week. The gangs attacked Haiti's largest prison and freed almost 4,000 inmates, sending Haiti into a state of shock. Hundreds of thousands of residents of the capital city of Port-au-Prince were forced to flee once the fighting began.
The armed gangs forced us to leave our homes. They destroyed our houses, and we're on the streets. Since the day I left my house, I've lived like an animal, because in the space we sleep, even animals don't sleep there. When we sleep, we are crammed together.
I come from Aubaine Street in Lalu. Because of the situation since Thursday, water is scarce. Water is life. As there is no water, we are forced to come here to buy a little water.
Now, there is a humanitarian crisis in Haiti, and the international community has been slow to react. In fact, the Dominican Republic has already shut its borders to Haiti. No surprise there.
We will never accept refugee camps in our country. That is out of question. And I don't think the United Nations will ask for that. I don't think they will.
Meanwhile, the United States says that it is monitoring the situation in Haiti and working towards the return of Prime Minister Henry.
So, first of all, we are closely monitoring the situation and condemn efforts by gangs to further destabilize and take control of Haiti. It's our understanding that the Prime Minister is returning to the country. We think it's important that he do so and that he be allowed to do so.
Now, Haiti remains a tinderbox as other gangs pledge to join Jimmy Cherizier in his coup against the country's prime minister. And as millions suffer from the violence, it's unclear if the international community will step in to help Haiti find a way out of this spiraling crisis. Watch this space for more updates. And finally, from Caribbean to Latin America, Peru has been gripped by a political crisis. Its Prime Minister, Alberto Alvarado, has resigned after a scandalous recording of him surfaced. Have the tapes exposed influence peddling under Alvarado, or is he a victim of political conspiracy as he claims? Our next report gets into the details.
The South American country of Peru has been hit by a major political crisis. The Prime Minister of Peru, Alberto Otarola, has stepped down. His resignation comes after a scandal that involves a controversial audio recording. The recording accuses him of being a corrupt political leader.
In the conversation with Mrs. President Dina Boluarte, I announced my decision to present my resignation as President of the Council of Ministers. This is with two objectives. The first one is to give peace of mind to President Boluarte, so that she can reshuffle her cabinet as she deems convenient and can work as she has been doing.
Here's what exactly happened that landed Peru in its latest turmoil. An audio recording of Otarola with his alleged lover was played by a local television network. The recording implicates him in improper dealings regarding government contracts. He's been accused of using his power to influence decisions on such contracts. The woman in the audio later obtained a government job. The scandal unfolded when Otarola was on a diplomatic mission to Canada. He was representing Peru at a mining convention. But as soon as this news broke, he sidelined his trip and returned to his country. His abrupt return underscores the gravity of the situation. However, Otarola vehemently denies any wrongdoings. He claims that he knew about the recording. According to his statement, the recording dates back to 2021, and he was not even a government official back then. Otarola calls the recording an orchestration by his political adversaries. He believes that the recording was edited as part of a conspiracy. Despite all of this, he decided to step down. But all this doesn't end with his resignation. A domino effect has been triggered. His resignation will be followed by a mandate that will change the political scenario of the country. The rule states that the entire cabinet that comprises of 18 cabinet members must resign too. Now all eyes are on President Dina Boluarte. She faces a critical decision which will decide the political fate of the country. Boluarte will either reinstate current ministers or usher in a new wave of leadership. Amid this chaos, the foreign minister, Javier González Oloecha, hinted at the forthcoming changes.
There will be a relaunch of the government's general policies, which will include some reforms so that trust in the coming cabinet is not just a formality, but a second opportunity and a win for 2024.
Just a month ago, President Boluarte had reshuffled almost the entire cabinet. Key ministers in important sectors like economy and mining were replaced. They had been tasked to put the country back on the path of economic recovery. The Latin American country is already battling recession, and the latest scandal has further jolted Peru's already turbulent political and economic sphere.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Thanks so much again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden. How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.